on Facebook at the office of Attract Capital here in a very sunny, warm, beautiful day on Long Island, New York. This is David. He is the CEO and founder of Attract Capital, and I'm Sonia.
Hi everybody, how are you today? Hope you're having a good day.
So today, Dave, we are talking about the art of the roll-up.
Sounds very sexy, doesn't it,
Yeah,
Sonia?
it does. I'm kind of interested to know what you're going to talk about today. This is, what is a roll-up exactly, Dave?
Well, a roll-up is when you are taking smaller businesses that tend to be fragmented industries where you can get benefit from bringing them all together. And it's just a fancy way to describe acquisitions, a series of acquisitions that you'll do over time. And they've been around for decades. People have been using roll-ups for as long as I've been in corporate finance, which goes all the way back to the late 80s. But they're really popular now, Sonia. I mean, I think there's a lot of things going on in the economy right now. You've got low interest rates, you've got good optimism, and you have people that are feeling confidence and animal spirits. So I think people are looking more at roll-ups. We get a lot of phone calls from prospects who want to do roll-ups, and so we thought organizing this information into a webinar would be really good for the prospects and the other people in the Attract Capital universe.
I have a question though. Is a roll-up have to be more than 2, less than 10, more than 3, less than 12?
It's a great question. A roll-up technically is where you have one acquisition, you call it your platform acquisition, and then you do future acquisitions on top of that. So they're sort of like add-on acquisitions. It's usually 2 or more. It can be 10, it can be 20. And as the company grows in size, it becomes easier for them to buy these smaller companies. And it almost becomes a form of organic growth for a company. We had a client, the most successful roll-up client we've ever dealt with. We helped them roll up over a 10-year period from 2006 to 2016, and they did 14 separate acquisitions.
Wow.
Yeah.
All with you.
They did them. Well, we were the continual advisor. We helped them with different lenders. We brought in different lenders for them, but they started small and they started close to where they're located, and then they kind of expanded regionally. And as they expanded and as the size of the company grew, they looked for bigger companies. And so it was sort of one of these. It was a regional expansion play. Then it was a product diversification play, and then it was a how do we gain more scale play. So the strategic reason for doing it changed over time. But there's a couple of reasons why they were successful, and I think the outline that we're going to take everybody through today is going to highlight what some of those reasons are.
Okay. Wow. Okay, so what are the keys to doing a roll-up?
You have to have a compelling rationale for the roll-up. Just because it looks like businesses can be brought together and rolled up doesn't mean they should be rolled up. Let me repeat that.
Okay.
Just because they can be combined doesn't mean they should be combined. You need to have businesses where you have a compelling reason, usually an efficiency gain, where if you put these businesses together, it will make sense, it will make them more productive, it will make them more efficient, it will reduce their costs, it will expand their reach. But it's got to be a strong, palpable reason to bring these businesses together. And a lot of people don't look at it that way. A lot of people just say, well, we've got this business, it's in this part of the country, we've got a similar business in this part of the country, we can put these like-kind businesses together, and they don't really focus on how the putting of the businesses will make those two businesses together. They don't focus on the efficiency of the combination.
So actually having one company sort of better enhance the services and products of the other. So you're always talking generally that it's the same industry, the same type of service when you're doing roll-ups.
Generally, yes. Generally, yes.
Okay.
And it's almost like, typically in Wall Street vernacular, people like to say, well, the math is simple. 1 + 1 = 3. Roll-up economics, it's 1 + 1 = 3.
Right.
Well, a lot of times you have to at least make sure that 1 + 1 = 2. And if you can't be sure of that, then you probably shouldn't even put the two companies together. I've seen situations where 1 + 1 = 1.
Oh, ouch. Yeah, which brings me to a question about cultural alignment.
That's a really good term, Sonia. I'm glad you brought it up. So you have to make sure the synergy is real with these roll-ups, that there's a benefit, a cost benefit that you're going to get from pulling them together. Usually that means focusing on the people, having a plan, and focusing on the operational processes. You have to have the right people, you have to have the right plan, and you have to have the right operational processes. Then you look at it, and one of the reasons that you can make sure that you can execute your plan is by making sure that you have the right people who are open-minded culturally to doing things differently. Okay, a lot of small businesses that get involved in roll-ups they're small, they're family-owned, they've been doing things a certain way. They could become a bit tribal, and when they become a bit tribal, that means that they don't want to change and they don't want to do things differently. So if you're the buyer of the business and you look at it and you say, well, this business is doing this and we needed to do something slightly different, you can't really rely upon a person that is not aligned with your new culture to make that change. So cultural alignment means that there needs to be a shared vision between the values of the acquiring company and the values of the to be acquired company, so that they're synced up. If they're not synced up, it's hard to get people to change things and to make the sort of the engineering process changes that need to happen.
So I would imagine then that on your journey to the art of the roll-up and finding those series of acquisitions, that very first acquisition is the most important one. Would it not be true?
Absolutely, Sonia. The first acquisition is the keystone acquisition. It's the cornerstone.
It's a good term, keystone acquisition.
And the reason it's the keystone acquisition is because if you don't get the first acquisition right, you don't live to do another acquisition, which is to say that you need to make sure that keystone acquisition, that you can build upon it, that you can buy these other companies and bolt them on, that there's enough of a management team, that there's enough of a management bandwidth, so that all the things that you want to implement, okay? A lot of times you want to combine sales forces, or you want to combine product lines, or you want to combine ERP systems, or you want to combine marketing departments. If you don't have the right first platform acquisition, it's very hard to be able to assemble those things and to kind of bring them in together and to make them efficient. So the first acquisition is key. If you don't get out of the gate strongly, you tend not to be able to do multiple acquisitions. Or if you do, not to be too fatalistic about it, you can recover, but you're usually losing a lot of time. And the thing about a roll-up is that typically it's in an industry where there's a perishability to the opportunity. If you try to roll up over a 10-year period, your industry is probably not going to be as valuable. Your business isn't going to be as valuable on the back end. But if you roll up over a 3 or a 5-year period, your business is going to be much more valuable. So the first acquisition is the keystone acquisition. The other thing you need to look at, in addition to cultural alignment, and I want to make sure that we're touching on this, is that you have to look at the ease of the combination of the businesses and what level of re-engineering is involved. So the ease of combination and the level of required re-engineering.
One moment here. What do you mean by re-engineering? Like restructuring the new company that you're acquiring, or restructuring the bridge that connects your company and the new company? What do you mean by that?
It's a great question, Sonia. It's more the latter, in that every business that gets acquired by another business, sometimes the acquired business is doing things better than the acquired business. Sometimes most of the times it's the other way around, where the acquirer is more efficient in its processes than the acquired. So you have to elevate some of the systems, or you have to streamline them, you have to make them more efficient. So there's some re-engineering. It's not necessarily restructuring, departmental restructuring. I think of it as they might be on an old version of an ERP system.
Right.
And the acquiring company is on a newer version.
Right.
And you need to bring them over. But a lot of times, if you don't have your arms around the fundamentals of the business, if you're not looking at the products, the customers, the systems, then it's easy to overlook the fact that you have to re-engineer. You can just sort of assume, if you don't get too deeply into the operation and you don't get under the hood and look at the underlying systems, it's easy to say, you know what, we don't need to worry about those systems. But in fact, you do need to worry about those systems, and you need to allocate resources and you need to allocate time. So the need to process re-engineer affects your ease of combination, and that's something that you really need to think about. The smart roll-up artists have all that figured out before they close the deal.
Really?
They have it all figured out. They not only know all the numbers,
okay,
but they know the people, they know the products, they know the customers, they know the processes, they know what has to be done. They have a very specific plan about around 100 days of what they're going to do post-closing, and they've got it all mapped out, and they actually have people as part of the acquiring company who will be in at the target company beforehand, understanding and mapping out exactly what has to happen operationally to bring it all together.
Oh, that's amazing. Yeah, it makes sense though what you're saying. So really want to take that emotional component. Just because something looks great on paper and has fantastic numbers and you're really, passionate about that company does not always mean, Dave, that it's the right company to acquire.
Absolutely, Sonia. So many times people fall in love with low multiple deals and their ability to project out acquisitions at low values. And they too often think of it as like they almost think of it as a financial exercise. Well, we're going to buy this company at this low price, and then we're going to add this company at this low price and this low company, and we're going to build a big company, and eventually when we sell it, we're going to get a much bigger price. Well, on paper, it works that way, but financially driven roll-ups tend not to be as successful as operationally driven roll-ups. Operationally driven roll-ups means that you can really understand the business that you're buying, where all the choke points are, where the re-engineering points are. You can understand the people, you understand how the businesses fit together, and how you can make the two businesses together more efficient, and how you can expand the overall reach into the marketplace with a wider product line. Those are operationally driven roll-ups. The financially driven roll-ups are people that are just saying, well, we're not going to grow, we're just going to buy this company, and we're going to grow it slightly, and then we're going to buy this other company, and then we're just going to build it up with a lot of debt, and we're not going to add value, we're not going to make it more efficient. And those businesses, because they don't do their homework and they don't get into the operations, a lot of times they lose customers and the profitability may suffer.
Have you seen any bad outcomes or case scenarios?
I have. I've seen plenty of roll-ups that have struggled because people didn't do their homework and they just were in a race against time to build a big company. And so all they were doing was they were just kept swimming like a shark, and they kept eating other businesses. They weren't getting
good analogy.
but there was no strategic focus of how this bigger company is more differentiated, how it's more specialized, how it's more efficient. It's just like, well, we need to have a 50-state strategy, or we need to have a densification strategy, or we need to have all these other locations across the country for this reason. There's got to be a strategic operational underpinning for this to make sense. Because if you don't have that, what you're doing is you're just scaling a company that has nothing differentiated about it. And so the point of the roll-up is that if you have a compelling rationale for the roll-up, you can buy these companies, bring them together, and get the whole to be greater than the sum of the parts. If the whole is greater with the sum of the parts, then you've done something that is really great.
So do not fall in love with low multiples. Is that
Do
right?
not fall in love with low multiples.
That's the message of the day, everyone.
Exactly, Sonia.
Yeah.
Which is to say that everybody likes to get something at a good price, but when something is too low a price, you have to question the reasons why it's so low. So a lot of acquirers, they just love low multiple deals. And they just think that there's less risk and there's that less things can go wrong. I've seen plenty of things go wrong at low multiple deals. A lot of times they're losing customers, they've got a problem, they might have a lawsuit on their hands, their business trend might be downshifting. There's any number of reasons that might be happening at a low multiple. So you really want to not fall in love with low multiple deals. You also want to make sure that you're not moving so quickly in the roll-up, because as you said earlier, there's a time value to doing the roll-up. So you want to do it quickly, but sometimes you can do it too quickly. I've seen companies, Sonia, that have done a deal a month for like a 2-year period. So they've done 24 deals.
Wow.
And what they had at the end of that period, I would call deal indigestion.
Heartburn. Roll-up heartburn. Oh, what?
So
explain that. Explain.
You bite off more than you can chew.
Okay.
So unless you have a really strong operational integration team,
Right.
unless you have a great operational due diligence process so that you know everything and you have a big back office that can go in and absorb the new company and help elevate it.
Right.
If you don't have all those resources and you're buying a lot of other companies, you've got a lot of headaches because it's much harder to bring it all together under one roof. It's much harder to organize it. It's much harder to integrate everything. So heartburn simply means is you bit off more than you can chew. What it means is that you kind of have you can't move as quickly, you can't think straight organizationally, you're in a bit of a stupor, you can't really react as quickly as you need to.
Right.
Your capital might be tied up. You may not have a good cash flow when you do this. There's all sorts of negative side effects. Think about when you have indigestion, you just don't feel good. You can't move as fast. You're not as alert.
Right.
Same thing with a company that's done a massive amount of acquisitions in a short period of time. They can't move as fast. They're not as alert.
Well, that's really interesting. And what do you talk about? You have another point here that's flimsy consolidation rationale.
Well,
so what is that exactly?
It's kind of another way of describing a compelling roll-up rationale. Okay, a lot of people say, well, I've seen roll-ups in, you name the industry, I've seen it. I've seen them in every healthcare business. I've seen them in physical therapy. I've seen them in labs, medical labs. I've seen them with garbage companies. I've seen them with billing companies. I've even seen roll-ups with mom and pop pizza businesses. Now, some businesses, and this is my view and I believe this, some businesses are inherently local businesses that are good as local businesses because they rely upon the dedication of the owner and they build local connections. And there's really not a lot of value that you can bring to that business by being part of a larger company.
Right,
okay?
right.
Take a pizzeria, for example. You're not going to get a better deal on your rent. Okay, you might get a slightly better deal on your ingredients that you're buying from your food supplier. You might get, but that's going to be offset by the fact that if a pizza owner sells his business as part of a larger company, he may not put in the hours, he may not put in the effort with the customer service. So on the one hand, the efficiencies are not all dollars and cents measurable. A lot of times it's the intangibles around the customer service interaction.
Passion.
It's the passion.
Loving the business, loving the product, loving your customers.
It's all about passion, Sonia.
It's all about loving what you do and just,
So to my point, I don't think a flimsy consolidation rationale means that, well, bigger is necessarily better. No, bigger is not necessarily better. If bigger is going to mean you're going to have less of a good product line, you're going to have less of a service focus, that your people are not going to work as hard, that your marketing is not going to be as responsive to your customer, then bigger isn't better.
Okay.
So that's what I mean by, so you don't want to have a flimsy consolidation rationale. You don't want to bite off more than you can chew, and you don't want to have a flimsy consolidation rationale.
Right. You had said earlier that speed is sometimes important as well in order to get these acquisitions accomplished.
Correct.
So how do you manage the speed aspect of an acquisition?
Well, I think that a lot of times when buyers are doing roll-ups, they try to sign up targets, but then they have this delay and they're not synced up with their lenders and they don't know where the capital is going to come from. So they're trying to sign up deals to acquire businesses, but I get the phone call. I'm like, well, I don't know where the money's going to come from, but we need the money in 30 days. That's not a good idea. What you want to do is you want to have some strategic capital relationships. You want to start talking to lenders early so you have an idea of where the money's going to come from. Because if you have to put all your focus on finding deals, and then you have to put all your focus on the next step of finding the capital, there's just too much of a delay. So you want to start the lender process early.
It's like when you buy a house.
Exactly.
You want to have a mortgage pre-approval letter with you before you go and buy your home.
That's a perfect example, Sonia. You really want to make sure that you have some capital standing behind you so that you look credible to the company that you want to buy. You also want to make sure that you have, and this is another counterintuitive thing that a lot of the people that I talk to through the Attract Capital universe, what we get people that want to start with smaller acquisitions. I want to acquire, it's my first deal, I want to buy a $3 or $5 million revenue size company. It's not a good idea. What you really want to do is you want to start bigger. You want to, I
think our camera is,
yeah.
There you go. All right.
You want to start bigger, Sonia. What I mean bigger is that you want to start at a level where you can get a lender on your side.
Sorry, everybody.
You want to start
Still there. Sorry, everyone.
at a level where you can get a lender on your side.
Operational difficulties.
And when you get a lender on your side, you're able to move more faster through the process. And I think with a lot of you want to go for bigger deals. Lenders like bigger deals. They want middle market companies that are doing over 20 million in revenue and 2 million of EBITDA. So you really want to focus on slightly larger targets. And you also want to have a pipeline of targets out there, Sonia. It's important to have a pipeline of targets. So if you have your money lined up and you have a pipeline of targets and you're looking at slightly bigger deals, you can do it more quickly.
How does mezzanine help benefit people in the process of the roll-up?
Mezzanine is a great way to fund your roll-up. It's a great way to have the capital power that you need to do multiple deals, because mezz lenders are very back-ended. They look at their they don't get their money principal repaid early. They get their principal repaid on the back end. So because they wait around a while for their principal, it's much better for the company who has just acquired another business to be able to use that cash flow in the business to put it into sales, to be able to put it into working capital, to put it in some capital expenditures or some equipment purchases. So mezzanine lenders are a very good way to structure your deals.
Okay. And so how do you do it soundly? How do you ensure that the entire process goes smoothly and correctly?
Well, I think the key to the successful roll-up is the operational due diligence. You want to make sure that you have you're looking at it with an operational perspective. You also want to make sure that you completely understand the character of the buyer, of the person that you're buying the business from. So the seller, you need to vet the character of the seller. What we find a lot of times in these small businesses is that the personality and the tendencies of the sellers seem to be reflected in the businesses. So you want to know what type of a person you're buying the business from. If they're very organized and they're sort of a very proactive person, you're likely to have a more organized and a proactive company. If you have somebody who has cut some corners or is not all that focused on basically building the business the right way, but is taking shortcuts, you might not have as fully developed organizational structure. But I think you can do it soundly by making sure that you're very operationally focused, making sure that you're vetting the character of the seller. A lot of times we see companies having an advisory board for due diligence. You obviously want to do financial due diligence. And I'd say the most important thing in an acquisition is you want to make sure that the customers are going to stick around, that you're not going to have attrition, that the customers are going to be there, that they're happy. And you can only do that through calling them and through due diligence.
That's very, very good, Dave. Well, thank you so much for all of this excellent advice. We're going to be posting this on LinkedIn. We will also be keeping this here on Facebook, so if you'd like to watch it again at a later date. If you have any questions, you can always email Dave at dbarnett@attractcapital.com. You can visit us on the web at www.attractcapital.com. We'd like to thank you very much for spending this afternoon with us.
Well, thank you, Sonia, for hosting. Everybody, if you have questions on your roll-ups, give us a call. As you can see, we have a lot to say on it, and I wish you a lot of luck with whatever deals you're pursuing right now.
Great.
Take care.
Bye-bye. Bye.